And we are live. Hey guys, how it going? This is Yar Spark, and I am here today with.
St. Michael. Hey, everybody.
We got some topics today, guys, and wanted to see what you guys would think of them, but we also want to discuss them as well, so have a little bit of a conversation after the live stream or during it. What's the first topic of the day, Michael?
All right. First up today, and I think this is probably on everyone's minds, is the leaving and the returning of the Thargoids. So, do you want to explain what has gone on so far, or shall I? A little brief overview.
Uh, from what I've gathered, the Thargoids basically intercepted us at the Witch Head Nebula, isn't that right?
That's true. They did. It all started, and we might have covered this a little bit in the last podcast. I can't remember. It's been a little while. I'm not sure we did though. Of course, the Thargoids retreated from the bubble, and we had a nice week of peace, as it were. But as we were warned by Palin and in Galnet, and I believe even maybe a few others, the Thargoids, of course, were not defeated and were back. But it seems that they basically retreated to sort of regroup, maybe regain some strength, and also focus on what really matters to them, which is the barnacle sites. So, of course, we'll get into the Witch Head Nebula in a second, but before even the Witch Head Nebula, they came back to the Pleiades, which, of course, was their original barnacle site, and specifically attacked Palin, one of our most important engineers, especially if you're a combat pilot. Those thrusters are pretty much a must. So, Palin got attacked, and his base was basically destroyed. And he had to escape on a megaship. I believe it was called the Carson Spring, which then that got attacked. Luckily, we had Axie and Hive and other AX groups out there who came to his defense, and he is now safely back in the bubble. But yeah, it's been quite a trying time because we lost Palin for a couple of weeks, and then after that, of course, the Witch Head Nebula situation. So I guess we'll go back to the beginning, Spark. What do you think about first? I guess their general treat in the beginning, and then second about the Palin situation, which I know is what probably most people were affected by.
Um, I personally think this is like really cool because this is the first thing that's actually like shaken the community. I would say, like as you said, this is a very important engineer, and the fact that
Hmm.
one, it went down, and two, it actually got attacked, probably actually motivated people to get out there and do their part, basically, so to say. I think forcing it upon people is not the right thing, but giving them a reason to, as such as this, probably makes it valid, in my opinion. I think us intercepting them for materials at the Witch Head Nebula was a fantastic idea. Um, the system of not having a station there yet was a little bit of a derp, but
Well,
hey,
there was one station in defense. There was the one science station that was already there beforehand.
yes, but it did not have a shipyard, which was the
No, it did. It did.
which was
Yeah, which was a big problem.
yeah, which halfway through the CG they eventually added it, or three quarters of the way through, which
They added it actually relatively quickly. Yeah, it was when the alliance system got defended quickly. And then of course they gave all this praise to the alliance, and I know the alliance is quite happy about that. Which is like not trying to poop on the alliance, but I have to say I think a majority of that was just because it was the closest system to the bubble. So then therefore most AX pilots just kind of went there first. um,
probably yeah.
yeah, but back to your previous point, I think it was really interesting because to me, the incursions did destroy stations. So it's not like these didn't affect people, but unless your personal PMF was in that system, and for those, I don't think anyone would really not know, but for those who don't know, PMF is a player minor faction. So if your personal player minor faction wasn't in that system, most people just didn't care. You just went to a different station or a different system, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a little annoying, but I'll go somewhere else. But this was the first time that something that the entire community as a whole was really bothered by, and like you said, I think it really gave motivation. Um, because all of a sudden it's like, hey, like one of the most important engineers in the game is now unavailable because of the Thargoids. We have to make sure this is not okay. And a lot of people, especially Axie and Hive, like really went full force into those systems and put up a huge defense of Carson Springs and Maya in general. So it was. Hey, Zach. This is a fellow player in Vini's Legion with me. We were just doing a podcast right now, but welcome.
Oh, we're not.
It's okay. It's all right. If you'd like to stay and join us as a special surprise guest, you can.
Okay.
Hello, Zach. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
We were just discussing the Thargoid retreat, and then, of course, the subsequent attacks on Palin and the Pleiades, and, of course, the Witchhead Nebula. And I was just making the point that I think, and in actual, actually, I should say, Spark made the point, and I was agreeing with him, that it was pretty interesting because it was one of the first times that Thargoids have really done something that affects the community as a whole. So we thought that was, while inconvenient, I know for the people who wanted to get his or get his engineering at that particular time, was pretty cool, to say the least.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So anyway, on to the next part of it, of course, was, we kind of secured the Pleiades, which was great, and actually in some ways it wasn't even worth fighting for, because the whole point of this was that the Thargoids wanted their barnacle sites back, right? But those barnacle sites had already been exhausted, which is why we had that CG the week before, where it was, hey, we need all this exploration data so that we can all get, new meta alloys that we need for humanity. And then, of course, they were discovered in the Witchhead Nebula. And so all of a sudden, all the major factions, or the major powers, I should say, the Alliance, the Empire, the Federation, all have their own private CGs to get ships, or stations, I should say, not ships, but stations, however, out to the Witchhead Nebula. And there was kind of that race that went on. But it seems all three of them, of course, ended up doing it, which isn't not surprising. And then, of course, the second they jumped there, I believe it was the day they jumped there, immediately got attacked and went into incursion, which makes sense. And then there was another big push to go defend those systems. So I think it's really intriguing how they're kind of twisting the story a little bit. It's been, kind of 6 months of the same old thing. I'm just getting the bubble attacked. And now we're finally getting something a little bit different. So, pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff.
Got anything to add to this, Zach?
No, I think Michael pretty much summed up a good majority of it.
As I said previously, I kind of hope they do more things like this. As you said, it shakes everything up and it actually motivates people, and it kind of drives the story with actual plot.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the next big question for us, especially us AX pilots, which for Lavini's Legion, that's kind of mine, and as well as Zach's department. In fact, Zach is the founder of Lavini's Legion's Edge Fleet, so shout out to those guys who do nothing but AX combat. And I think it'll be really interesting for us is, like, when are they coming back, and are they coming back, and if they do come back, which I think they will, how hard it's going to be, because I have a feeling, and FDev kind of hinted at this at one point or another. I can't remember the exact time, but it was a while ago. We're talking like last year. They basically said, this will be the year of the Thargoid Wars, and it's going to get continuously worse and worse and worse. So I think we're kind of getting a mid-year lull, which is why you kind of got that retreat, and then kind of the stuff that happened in Pleiades and the Witchhead. But I do think they're going to come back, and I think it'll maybe be with a vengeance. Now, whether that means it's just going to be harder to defend this system, or actually even a little scary, or maybe they'll even attack or infest more systems, meaning instead of defending 6 at a time, we'll have to worry about, 9 or 12 or something like that. And of course, if you start multiplying the number of systems that are attacked, that's going to really spread the general elite dangerous AX community by quite a bit. So I'll be curious to see how it evolves from here. So, and we can speculate on that all day, but I know we have other topics to as well. So
it makes me curious if this is gonna turn into something like Warframe. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with that game.
A little bit, but I have to say I'm certainly not an expert on Warframe. But go ahead, elaborate. What do you mean?
I just feel like probably like once the update comes along, like the big update that we're gonna be getting later, next year? I think it's gonna definitely drive the Thargoids a little bit more and actually show the appearance of them battling them on the ground, like because we were speculating um, Space Lakes. So I mean, they're saying this is a big update, and Space Lakes is a big update, but even pushing that further to combat on the ground would be unique in its sense, or using the SRVs or something. I don't know. That's just me really wanting ground combat.
I think that will come, but I think that's more likely to come with the 2020 update because we all know like the big sort of rumor is Space Legs, and we'll actually talk about this a little more in the podcast. But I also think they're going to do more with SRVs and other things and bases and maybe stuff like that. And so I do think that's coming. I'm just not sure it'll come this year.
Yeah, because I kind of like the idea of the Guardian Sentinels and that kind of combat. So I'm kind of hoping they expand on it, because I feel like that's something that this game could really use. I mean, we're always confined to a damn ship.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something we've all been hoping for forever, and I'll let Zach do this, but I mean, what are your thoughts, Zach, on, Space Legs and other stuff? I know you're probably hoping for it as well, right?
I think it would be kind of interesting, to be honest. There's a lot of aspects of it that I'd like to experience. I think it'd be pretty cool to be able to actually walk around a ship. I think if I could at least, start off with walking around my vessel, I think that would be a good place to start, maybe. Maybe not necessarily be able to walk around planets, but if, the ability to go around maybe ships or even maybe stations too, I think that would be kind of really cool.
Yeah, I like what you said, the last thing, especially the stations, and I've said this. I don't know if I've said this on this podcast, but I've said this definitely with other pilots and commanders. It would be really cool to be able to meet and have actions or conversations with other commanders in a non like threatening situation. You know what I mean? Because so many times, and I know this happens to me all the time. I'm not a ganker, right? But I'll jump into a system, and but I'm a PvPer and I am an X guy, so I'm generally flying around in a fully fitted combat ship. And the second I'm scanned, and I don't really blame these people. The second I'm scanned, though, they're out, right? They immediately highway, and it's really hard to even meet anybody unless you're part of a community like LL. Because people just are too worried. Oh, well, he's in a combat build. He must be trying to gank me. So they just immediately jump out. But if you could meet people in a non-threatening environment where you're just walking around a station and have a conversation that way, even if it's just through the local chat, like, I think that would do wonders for connecting people and making the game better. Because I know another big complaint I hear from a lot of commanders, in fact, a lot of commanders who join LL, and I know Zach has seen the same thing, and I'm sure you have too, Spark, is they join our communities, right? And they're just like, I just wanted people to play with. Because when they play by themselves, they're just scared of everyone they meet, or they just hide in solo. You know what I mean? So, anyway.
Yeah, add a more social aspect.
Exactly, in a way to meet people without being like, oh shit, is it going to blow up my, 10 million or 50 million or whatever, your rebuy might be or whatever your ship might be. So, I think that would be...
I think I'd be tempted to buy VR. I would be tempted to buy VR at that point. I mean,
yeah!
Can you imagine being able to walk around your ship? I know from what I've been told what it's like to even look at the inside of the cockpit of a ship when you're commanding it. But just imagine you just step out of, say, a cutter, and you're standing there on the pad, and you look up and you just see it puts scale to a whole new perspective if you could be able to just walk around your ship. I think that would be pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, you can actually kind of get that, at least in your ship, in VR now, because I use an Oculus Rift, and I'm sure others here use 5 Pros or whatever your VR set is. But the problem is, it's not really you walking around. Like you can get up physically, meaning you're yourself in your office or your living room or wherever you play your game at, and you can walk around your ship to a point. But you're limited by cords because you know you have to physically walk there. Generally, I don't use the. I have them, but I've never used the actual like little hand motion thing. So maybe you can walk around more with those. I'm not sure about that. Maybe you can't. I honestly don't know. But you can walk around your ship, but your body is literally just headless at that point. So, and you're also still in your seat. So it's more just like you're almost in free camera mode, I
It's an
guess would
out
be the
of
way to.
body experience.
Yeah, yeah, or exactly an out of body experience, or you're just like, oh my god, I just lost my head, literally. So, yeah. Anyway, but I totally agree with you, Zach, and especially in stations like that would just be utterly amazing. And I mean, we already see the scale even just on a monitor of these stations. You know, when you pull your ship and you see all those little tiny light squares, and each one of those squares is basically the size of a floor of a building, and there's hundreds of them. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's pretty. Like if you just think about that scale and then putting it into VR and being in a station and walking around, I mean, it's just utterly. You're just walking in space cities basically, which is
Exactly.
just so cool. All right, so we've kind of gotten a little off topic, so I feel like this is probably a good segue into our next topic, and this is going to be a pretty broad one here, but we haven't covered this before in the podcast, and I think it'll be a good segue. And Spark, I definitely want you to start off on this one because this is kind of your specialty. Let's talk about exploration, and not just some exploration, but some builds, some ways to look for some cool things, some places to go, some things to find, maybe even some things to do, and even what you can find in the bubble.
True. I feel like to every exploration is, as I kind of mentioned earlier, the heart of your ship, like what you're confined to, because you're gonna be in that thing for a while, so you better love it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
With that though, I think having the knowledge of being ready and prepared, like with your frame shift drive upgraded, or at least your ship ready as lightweight as possible, or as ready as possible with the necessary repairs or capabilities that you're going to need it to. So probably the most essential is a fuel scoop and a decent jump range so you're not stuck.
Yeah. I want to.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's two things for builds for exploration that I feel a lot of Explorer pilots, and I saw this on DW2 a lot. I feel like there's two things that are really neglected, and people think it's impossible or hard to do, but it's not, that you should do to your ship. All right. The two things are, one, everyone always assumes go so lightweight that you use the minimum on everything. Don't do that. There's two things you want to have decent. You don't have to have them maxed out. You don't have to have them awesome, but goodness sakes, decent thrusters. Because if you're gonna land on a high G world and you're going in there with E-rated thrusters or D-rated thrusters that are undersized, you're just not gonna do it. So try not to skimp on those. Can you lightweight them? Sure, but try to keep decent thrusters. The other thing, and this is a thing that I see a lot of people also complain about, is shields. But let me give you an example. You can take a condo, put 4A prismatics on it, okay? 4A, so only a size 4, and then you can put E-rated, and this is very key, E-rated shield boosters, which are far lighter than regular shield boosters, and you can give your ship over 2,000 megajoules, which is more than enough to land not only on a high G world, but even escape a gank if you just engineer them. And I feel like so many people go out with 4A, like 3D or 4D shields that are like 200 megajoules. They try to land on a high G world, or God forbid, get pulled by a ganker, and they're just dead, like instantly. And sometimes these places they're dying at are thousands of light years from a station. So they basically either have to start from scratch or they have to give up. And so I know it seems like those two things are like are hard to get on your ship, but I assure you, if you just engineer some 4A shields, 4A prismatics especially, if you put some E-rated shield boosters on your ship, if you put some decent thrusters, yeah, you're going to lose a little bit of jump range, but you can still make a condo with a 70 light year plus jump range that it's not a piece of paper, that can actually take a hit. And I really would recommend to any explorers out there, especially if you're going to be doing really long distance exploring, to do that. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on builds. I wanted to add that. Sorry, didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt.
I think you know me and my exploration route, or my exploration ships personally. I am kind of one of those people that do go with the most lightweight possible, but I'm also not prepared, basically. Um, what I usually do, yes, I do run a 3D shield generator, but I usually enhance it by 5, or power enhance it by 5, which actually increases the optimize, or no, increases basically the absolute on it, I think. Basically, like, reinforced. But as I would agree with Michael, if you're new, I would probably go with the most as you can go, just because it's better to be safe than sorry. If you get comfortable, and this is just my opinion, if you get comfortable and think you can do with less, all the power to you. I know I get a lot of flack for using D-rated power plants. I'm just one of those guys that like to go for the absolute, but that is just me. But I do heavy duty the lightweight armor, which helps a lot, and I also do carry repair limpets. And I still think you can make a viable ship, and the frameshift drive is the main key to it, and your jump range. But also having the fuel scoop is very important because obviously you need fuel to run things. But I think we might be getting ahead of ourselves here, Michael. What would you say for a new person starting the game that wanted to explore? What would you say would be the best thing to do?
Oh wow. Yeah, that's a tough one. Because I've always been a firm believer when you start this game that I know it's a nightmare to some people, but I really feel like you should try to get some money and some engineers. Assuming you're willing to get like some engineers and some money. Well, you're definitely not going to be taking a con out there, right? But I think there's some decent lower end ships. You could probably work. You could certainly work an Asp Explorer, a DBX, and do some stuff. Um, I would say some quick things you could do. I know a lot of people don't like Guardian sights, but go get a Guardian frame shift drive booster. It's really not that bad of a grind if that's all you're getting, especially. Um, I would say if you want a little more module space, go with an ASP. If you want a little more jump range, go with the DBX. That's personal preference. Depends on what you want to do. Um, I would definitely also say if you're new, bring an SRV because you're probably not going to have a lot of mats and you might need to get some. Because there's going to be times when you might need to synth a few things and you just need the ability to get those mats when you're not out. General advice, make sure you have some synthing material when you leave. Um, if your shields are low, you're not experienced, don't land on high G worlds. I know some of them are really cool, but you're probably just going to blow up. Kind of just stick within what your capabilities are, I guess what I would say. And you know what? If it's your first exploration ship, you don't need to go to even Sajay. You don't even need to go that far, Beagle Point. There's plenty of cool things around the bubble. In fact, that kind of brings us to one of our other topics with exploration of cool things you can visit locally. Like there's obviously just the Witch Head Nebula. There's tiny little nebulas even near the bubble. There's one in particular that I'm totally blanking on the name of, but it's like really cool. When you go in the system, the entire system turns blue and there's black holes. It's not the Pleiades, although Maya is a cool place to visit because it has a black hole. You know what? I'm actually in game. I'm gonna go quickly look up what it was, but it's just a really cool system. It's like a CD system. It's a very, very, very tiny little. And actually, this also comes to another conversation that you were asking, like how to find cool stuff. If you go to your Gal map, you can actually, if you zoom in, you don't even have to zoom in all the way. Just kind of look around. You can find little nebula, little other things all over the place, including near the bubble. And so it's not as hard as you might think to go find something cool without going 20,000. But Zach, have you ever done any exploring? I've never really asked you that.
The most exploring I did was mainly for based. I think I went to the Statue of Liberty Nebula.
Okay.
And that was quite the trip. It was, it was interesting, especially with my, I like to call it the pocket rocket of the DBX because, man, you were talking earlier about these engineering decisions and everything. I totally cheese graded my DBX, where it was literally an FSS. It was like those plastic folding chairs. You just duct tape one of those to a frame shift drive, and that's exactly what it was. It was not designed for luxury. There was no cup holders or
It's
anything.
stripped down to the bare minimum. Huh?
Pretty much. I was like, what's the furthest I can push this thing? And this was before there was Guardian boosters or anything like that. So like, I mean, I think I got at most probably like 50 or 60 jump range. Like I was just milking it for jump range. Like I just wanted something easy. So I could get my distance from. It did work out though. I did achieve what I set out to go do, and it was a really cool nebula. But I also unlocked that engineer doing that exploration, and yeah, I think I still have it. I don't know, but it certainly was an interesting ship for sure.
Well, I think in some ways you might be the perfect person to ask then. So since you were a noob when you kind of went out to go explore, or at least a noob to exploring, that is. Um, do you have any advice for a newbie pilot going out to explore with a pretty rickety ship, I guess?
Don't bump into anything, especially when your hull is like glass.
Yes, that is very good
Otherwise it'll
advice.
be a one-way trip.
One-way trip, right? And you do not want to lose that data, guys, because trust me, when your ship blows up, that goes with you. So, and actually, that'll be not only worth quite a bit of money to you as a new pilot, but that'll be worth a decent amount of rank. And so, you don't want to lose that if you can. All right,
How about
Spark.
what was your first exploration trip, and what did you use, Michael? Actually,
Oh, my first exploration trip. Actually, I guess I was a bit of a noob when I first explored too. First thing I jumped in this game, a buddy got me into it. I won't tell that whole story or anything and bore people, but simply put, I've always been really into astrophysics and cosmology and particle physics and quantum physics and all that in general, right? So when I jumped in this game, and he was like, "Hey, it's the whole Milky Way galaxy." First thing came to my mind, it was, "Can I go to Sagittae?" And he said, yes, you can. So I was like, I want to go to Sagittae. So I went hardcore, right? I'm a pretty good grinder. Not saying the best, but a pretty good grinder. I'm one of those dudes who can really put up with 8 hours of doing the same thing over and over. And so I was like, well, what's the best exploring ship? And now, by the way, I know people will argue with this, and it's not necessarily true. But meaning my friend, told me, he was like, "Oh, well, if you want the best exploring ship, you want." He probably said that because of the jump range, looking back. But that's what he said, right? So I was like, okay, I want a Conda. How do I get a Conda? He was like, get a lot of money. And I was like, all right, well, how do I do that? So I went out to Robigo and I did a shit ton of Robigo runs. And this is back when you made like a decent amount. It was like kind of the money maker at the time. And I was making like 30 million credits. So I literally just sat there for like 2 weeks and I earned like, I think it's something like 2 billion credits. Like I just literally did nothing else. And that's how I started this game, by the way. So imagine I'm a brand new player and all I'm doing is Robigo runs, upgrading to a slightly bigger ship so I can take more passengers. Robigo runs, and boom, boom, boom. Anyway, I finally afforded enough money to get my Conda. I didn't do much engineering to it. In fact, I think the only thing I engineered on it was the FSD drive, and everything else was just stock. And I remember I put a bunch of weapons on it and laid it down. I think by the end of putting everything on it, it was 40 layers. And he was like, hey, you don't need this. And I was like, I'm not going up there undefensible, not understanding the game really. And so I had like a 40 light year jump range. And he was like, well, you can use like the Neutron Highway. Well, I tried using that and it scared the shit out of me. So I just hardcore jumped it out to Colonia, then hardcore jumped it out to Sagittae. But I will say, when I first did my first trip, I didn't even think about landing on planets. I didn't do any of that. I was just so focused on getting to Sagittae that I just pretty much hardcore booked it to Colonia and then hardcore cut from Colonia to Sagittae. And yeah, that was it. Like it's not that exciting, I guess, in the end. I just pretty much upgraded FSD. Oh, I remember I did go get a Guardian frameshift drive booster because I was a little bit later joining this game, even though now I have thousands of hours in this game just because I spend way too much time on it. I actually was a later joiner of the group, so I joined after that. So I did have a Guardian frameshift drive booster. And yeah, make a long story short, that's pretty much it, right? So yeah, just built a Conda, built it as best I could at the time, and jumped out the Sagittae.
Yes, as I was discussing with a fellow watcher in the podcast, Dean Inot, I don't know how to say your name, but I'm hoping I'm pretty close. He said his first exploration ship was a Cobra, and I actually said my first exploration ship was also a Cobra, but his was a Mark III and mine was a Mark IV. When I first started playing, I basically started playing about 8 months to 10 months before Horizons was even out. So I mined my way from a Sidewinder to a Cobra Mark III, and I basically had no one really to play with, so I basically learned the game by myself. And I looked up online, they're like, yeah, mining's pretty profitable, go mine Palladium. And so I got my Sidewinder, went out, mined my Cobra, or mined till I got my Cobra Mark III, and I was like, now I can start my frontier basically in a bigger and better ship. And I was pretty happy with my Cobra Mark III. I upgraded it, I gave it all the love in the world. I knew I wanted to get out there and explore, and I was close to actually making a Cobra Mark III to go out and explore, but FDev released a video for the Cobra Mark IV and showed off all of its stats, and I looked at it compared to my Cobra Mark III. Yeah, the Cobra Mark III was lighter and could go further, but the Cobra Mark IV could hold so much more. So I waited till the Cobra Mark IV came out, and I got it. I actually bought like 3 of them, to be honest. And I earned all of my money from either mining or killing wanted ships and Hazreses. I didn't look up any money method ways because I didn't know any, and I didn't own any big ships to really do them. And I actually stayed in a small ship for quite a long time, actually. I just found big ships to be very underwhelming and very boring. But basically, staying on topic, I went out in a Cobra Mark IV with 17 light years. And if anybody's actually been watching my channel for quite a while, I actually have those videos up on my channel. They're some of the first videos I have. And it was amazing. It was a 6-month journey to basically all the nebulas, and even I went to where Colonia was before even Colonia was around. So it's pretty ironic. It was a dangerous journey, and I learned a lot from it, and I basically applied all of my knowledge to it, and with all of that exploration data that I had coming back, because I came back once Engineers was released, because I wanted that juicy engineer goodness. I came back with all this exploration data, and I basically just ran through the Engineers like it was no tomorrow, and before I know it, I had a very combat-worthy small ship, and then a medium ship. I think I made my first 100 million in the game just with all of my exploration data. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. I think it's kind of interesting that a lot of us had our first exploration trips, and all 3 of us, maybe not the day we started or anything, but we all had them decently early in our Elite Dangerous careers. So to cover a few more of the topics before we move on, maybe Spark, actually, I think you would probably even be the best person to ask for this, as you're, I think, probably the most seasoned explorer among the 3 of us. Is there any places you would recommend to go, or bubble, or outside of the bubble for that matter, or things to do?
Would you say as a new player or as a person that likes to go out and explore?
Maybe a little bit of both. if possible.
Um.
Um,
Okay.
let's, you know what? Why don't we start with sort of the newer players? Maybe some stuff to find in the bubble, so they don't even have to go the thousands of light years. And then once you covered that, maybe we can move on to some of the things you can find outside them.
Yes. There is a lot of things to find within the bubble. I feel like using the passenger missions to see what's local, figure out what nav beacons are around and what cool places, finding your favorite star in said constellation or places in the constellation like I have. Um, finding known places that we talk about like Seoul in the bubble. That's a pretty cool place. Visiting nearby super giant stars or finding giant stars in the galaxy, finding Earth-like worlds, finding the bright stars that you'll find in the galaxy map sometimes that are close. Um, Even now with the new stations things that you can find, there's a lot of things you can still find in the bubble, and they'll even provide either combat oriented things or give you missions or materials or loot per se if you're a bandit of that type. And I would say for the seasoned veterans, you can use the galaxy map, or not galaxy map, but the codex, and figure out what's all around you, what's been discovered, what there is to find, and maybe that you can find also, or go and see what other people have seen, or go out to these far out nebulas, or even far out brighter stars. Or as some people would go out to Sagittae, Colonia. Um, I feel like what hinders a lot is that stupid gridlock around Bernard's Loop, but I think that's a whole different story for another day. Got anything to tack on, guys?
Uh, did you mention the generation chips? Of course, if you're talking about the bubble,
Yeah,
I
that
think
too.
those are some cool things. And by the way, there when it comes to generation ships, guys, not only are those really cool to visit just to see them, but it's really cool because they all have stories. Now you can be cheap and cheat and go to canon and read some of these stories. And I'll admit I've done it a little bit myself, but it's really not the same thing to go out there and do that. Like so, of course, like one of the more famous ones, the Zora out in the Formidine Rift, is just fantastic to visit. And many of those. Like there's even some cool things like that actually can give you valuables, like the Jameson's crash site, which has a lot of great lore to it, which is not only cool for the story and how it's intricate to the lore and the Thargoids, but it's really cool because it can give you mats, especially for data, including G5 mats, by the way. Or the bug killer out in the Pleiades, and the reason it's called the bug killer is as a crashed anaconda called that. And not only can you get a really interesting story about the early part of the Thargoid Boys again, you can also once again get a bunch of mats, and this time instead of data, you'll get G5 raw mats. So sometimes you can even not only combine interesting stories and interesting places to visit, but you can also combine them with things to get. Another great example of that is some of these geological and biological sites on planets where you get to see these barnacle trees or geysers, and some of these geysers are really cool because you can actually like put your SRV on top of them and they'll shoot away in the air and stuff like that. But what's also neat is you can get the raw mats from them. You can shoot them, and a lot of times you'll get really good raw mats in a concentrated area instead of having to drive all over the place. So Lagrange clouds with their lightning. I mean, I have to say, I give a little credit to FDev. They've really added a lot of things that make exploring much more than just going out and looking at different colored. So you can really find. You can find guardians, like find Thargoids. You can find crash ships with stories to. You can find generation ships. You can find mats, and a lot of times you can combine those things. So there's a ton of things out there, guys, that you can go look up. And I would definitely recommend if you're struggling to figure out where to go, maybe Canon has some great resources that you can look up places to go. Sometimes even if you go look at passenger missions, and they're like these missions that are 10,000, 20,000 years light years out of the bubble. Generally, those are going to places that are interesting. Generally, that's why they want to go there, right? It's because it's something like a giant star or black hole or whatever might have you. So sometimes those are good places to find. But the point is that there's plenty of resources out there that you can go look at that are going to really help you, even especially as a new player, to find places to go, and even as a seasoned player, I occasionally. So I would definitely take advantage of those things.
Yes, I agree highly.
Okay. Do we feel like we've kind of covered exploration? Because if so, we can kind of
For
Gonna
a
move
topic,
on.
for a topic that we were gonna make short and simple, it sure turned out pretty big, huh?
Yeah, well, it's hard to cover that, and I'm sure we didn't even come close to covering everything. But I know this is one that'll interest all three of us, and I think maybe this time we'll let Zach go first. Fleet carriers. What are your thoughts? Now, a
Um,
decently broad topic, but go ahead.
um, one word. Awesome. I'm so ready for this. I've been ready. I'm sure anyone with a big bank account is ready
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, seriously, it makes sense. I mean, we have a pretty decent sized fleet with a lot of pilots, and I feel like fleet carriers are going to be very beneficial to large fleets. It's going to help us a lot in many ways. Everything from power play to BGS to who knows, maybe exploration. There could be a lot of things possible. I'm really curious to find out how in depth you can actually go. Are they going to be defendable? Are they going to be upgradable? You know, there was a lot of things hinted, but I'm ready to find out what exactly they have in store for us.
I think so too. Do you want to go ahead, Spark, or would you like me to go on my thoughts here?
I'll let you go first so I can maybe see what you have to say.
Okay, well, I've had a couple of questions. Well, first off, let me just reiterate what he said. Awesome, finally, thank you. We've been hearing about fleet carriers for well over a year now, and I think it's really cool that we're finally going to get them. And considering the trailer, considering the time we have an announcement, I'm not worried about a delay. I'm not worried about anything else. I think we really are finally getting them. So let me just say that that's really cool. I do have quite a few questions about them. There's a lot of rumors as to what they could be, but really the only hardcore evidence we have of anything is the video, right? So we know they're going to be pretty big. I believe if you really pay attention to the video, you can see two rows on the top of four each of large ship pads, which can fit a cutter. So you can already tell you right there, they're at least 4 to 5 times as long as a cutter, or at least that version of one. And actually, we'll get up to what that might mean next in a second. Um, One of the big questions is there only going to be one type of carrier? Will it be just one generic carrier for, every power can either buy one, or a player or group? Or are there going to be optional carriers, meaning are there going to be smaller ones? Are there going to be bigger ones? Are there going to be ones for individual sale? Are they only going to be purchasable by squadrons? Or are they going to be able to be purchasable by individuals? If you do purchase them as an individual, can you give them to your squadron? I mean, there's just a ton of unanswered
Hmm.
questions when it comes to this. And also, what's going to be that price tag? Because I've heard some estimates that are as small as, say, 10 billion, 5 billion credits. But I've also
Rip Michael's
But I've
headphones.
also, sorry, rip my headphones. Sorry, I've heard estimates as small as 10 billion, but I've heard estimates as high as 150 billion.
Need me to take over there real quick, Michael?
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Um, help Michael there. I think fleet carriers are amazing. It makes me curious if this is going to push the boundaries of war for BGS and for power play. As probably Zach can agree with me, this is our versions of the fleet carriers that the powers get. We're basically getting on equal terms. And I think this will push independent groups to a new strive. It makes me curious to see how everything will work out. As I said, I think they're great, and I really hope they expand this game into a way that we have never seen before, and that will shock us. I feel like this basically gives me a sense like from that carrier that you see in like the Avengers, if anyone knows that movie.
The helicarrier.
Yeah, that's what I think when I see this.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I really hope. I know they were in the teaser. It looked like looked pretty generic, kind of like kind of follow the same design philosophy as a lot of stations do. However, it would be really cool if they have a Federation and Imperial design philosophy similar to the capital ships. If they did something like that, oh my god, I think I would lose my mind.
All
I
right, I am turned. Sorry about that. Want to apologize to the podcast in general. Not only I have some technical difficulties, had some little family issues as well. So, but everything is settled now, so we're all good.
oh, good. Um, to elaborate what you were saying, Zach, I do hope they add like a customization of that sort. I also hope they add basically kind of what they do with the ships, like ship kits and paint, of course. It would give a nice touch.
Giant spoiler off the back of it.
If you so desire, yes. Just for the freaking lulz. I mean, I would die laughing, but I'd probably cringe at the same time. But I would love to see these be upgradable. I It would be cool if these fleet carriers could become a new home. Could become something quite bigger in the future. They could become stations. Um, as I said, there's a lot of capabilities with this, and it's really up to FDev how this goes. I know it's not going to go anywhere fast, and it's probably going to start off small, which is fine. Because this is going to need a lot of balancing and a lot of love, in my opinion.
Yeah, actually, I would really love to touch on what you just said right there. As far as them being like bases or stations, I think one of the things that's really exciting about something like this, right, is it's pretty clear that they're going to have jump capabilities. I mean, when you watch the video, even if you just get beyond the rumors, when you watch the video, what are they doing? They're jumping in basically through like what would be a capital ship jump portal, right? One of the large ships. You would also assume those are the same for ships and other things. But what it does is that gives an entire squadron or a group of friends, because obviously I don't think all those pads are going to be used just for your ship, because obviously you're just going out of one at a time, right? So it's pretty clear they're going to be able to be used by your friends or your squadron or whatever it has to be, which means that if you as a squadron wanted to move somewhere, and maybe even a really distant place like Colonia, you could do it as a group as a whole, and that just opens up things immensely. I mean, even in the bubble, it opens up things. Like, imagine, for instance, if I don't think we would do this, but imagine if some major group like Lavini's Legion or FUC or FLC or some other big power group, like, jumped an entire squadron, or at least part of their squadron, like a significant part of it, like directly into an enemy system. And just immediately was like, we're setting up shop here and we're going to totally wreck you guys on BGS or whatever you might want. Like, those are things that could really make a difference in the game. I mean, I've even heard rumors and stuff that these fleet carriers will have hard points, right? So that would assume that you could even assign a pilot to fly them, and even they can come into battle. And imagine they also might be intricated. All right, this is something that's very speculative. It's no backing on this at all. But going to the hard points point, some people have theorized, and myself included in this, that maybe the reason this giant ship will have those is because they're finally going to introduce Thargoid motherships. And this will be something that's equal enough to take it on, along with the help of course, all the squad. So imagine like a mothership jumps in, you jump in your fleet carrier, and of course it's carrying nothing but AX ships, and they just swarm out along with, I'm sure, the other ships, interceptors swarming out, and you just have this massive, epic battle. Like, I'm probably a little bit of wishful thinking here, I'm sure, and it probably won't be that cool, but I mean, that's the kind of possibilities we're looking at, which is just really...
I think that would be amazing. It would definitely be something new, and I think that would just be something cool to add on, or something similar. It makes me curious to what if they'd have like station weapons or things you can add on to it. I would hope they would have some form of justice protection system. And
yeah, definitely.
I'd also hope it has a shipyard. I feel shipyards, outfitting, and other stuff like that is very important, and I think it has its pros and cons, but I'm curious if it would have missions, that station. I don't know if
Like maybe for your faction, like if you could buy it for your squadron, like maybe your PMF will be on that ship, kind of like on an Aegis ship, it'll take like the PMFs of the local system, but maybe instead of that, it'll just take your faction, and you can have different missions depending on where you go or what you're doing, for that area. Like now, I feel like some of that's a lot of code to write, but then again, they have said this is the biggest update ever, and it's 2 years coming, so who knows? I mean, maybe they will do something like that. Now, I guess the fleet carriers aren't quite part of that 2 year update because they're coming in December, but they're certainly part of the update team. And who knows, maybe this is like a first step to something that'll even be added onto it with the 2020 update. I also think one of the biggest questions, and maybe you guys already covered this while I was having my little technical issues, is are they going to be for individual purpose or only squadrons? And if they are going to be for individual purpose, how much money are they going to be? Because I think if you start talking about like prices of 100 billion or more, and I have heard those numbers thrown about by a few people, I'm not sure that anybody besides some of the big squadrons would be able to. There's not many individual commanders out there who even have, say, 10 billion of free cash, much less 100. So I think it'll be really interesting to see, like, how much is it going to be? Because I think that's going to affect how successful they are. Because I do have this worry that they're going to put like 100 billion price tag on it. And yeah, some groups like our group, Lavini's Legion, will be able to afford it. But you know what? There's going to be a lot of groups, especially the smaller ones, who just cannot afford those prices. And I think it would be a real shame to alienate that much of the community. Maybe they'll figure out a way to like have, like I was trying to say earlier, different sized squadron ships. Maybe there'll be a smaller one for individual purpose, or for smaller squadrons. Maybe there'll be a really big one. Maybe they'll have different sizes. Maybe they'll have different makes. I've even heard like there might be one for the Empire, one for the Feds. Now, of course, 90% of this, not hell, 90%, 99% of this is just rumor and conjecture and probably means nothing. But those are the possibilities that it have. So I think all those things are interesting questions to think about with the fleet carrier. Even though for right now we really only have one option or one thing that we see, which is basically a really big ass one that looks kind of similar to a mega ship, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like having a lot of these ships, though, could be very overwhelming, especially on the server side, plus player-wise, I don't know.
I mean, we're able to have the stations. I have a feeling once they drop in a system, like even if you can fly them around in the sense of like use them in combat, I don't think there's going to be much super cruising, right? So I don't think that'll be so much of it. I don't think you're going to have to worry about jumping into a system and fleet carriers are going to be super cruising around pulling pilots. And even if they could, based on the large to small mechanic, their chances of pulling anyone smaller than them would pretty much be zero, right? I mean, imagine, think about like if you're an experienced pilot and you're in a Corvette versus another experienced pilot in, say, an Imperial Courier, like that vet's not pulling. You know what I mean? If they're of equal skill, just based on the mechanics of the game, that vet's going to lose. But I think those are all interesting things to think about. I guess we'll find out in December. Maybe September we'll know a little bit more. Who knows? Unfortunately, as we all know, FDev does have a really big tendency of keeping things tight and closed, which kind of sucks because, we really just don't know what to expect. We got a little 30-second teaser, and that's about it. That's what we're working with, right?
Yeah. I'm hoping to see some more ships too, personally, but I'm also hoping for just bigger horizon. No pun intended.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The fleet carriers the new fleet carriers, I think kind of ties in, and we can even continue the carrier conversation with this one. What do you think about the possibility of new base building mechanics? We already know it's pretty much confirmed that FDev is looking for AI vehicle drivers for ground vehicles. So it's pretty clear that some form of ground-based SRVs that are AI controlled are going to start being around and stuff like that, which in a lot of ways implies bases or base building. So what are your thoughts on that? And I guess you can kind of tie that in with fleet carriers as well.
You want to start this off, Zach?
Any thoughts?
I don't know if he's there.
Oh, we might have lost Zach. Zach down?
One moment, I'm just fixing that.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and go for it.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and start, Spark? Good job.
trying to land at the same time here. I think base building is a great part of it, but I would worry that it would. This is a big game with a lot of a lot of places to build at. So I don't think this would be a problem, but I would see possibly like a lot of grieving and just junk laying around. Basically, I would see it as like a used up Minecraft server or fuck, I can't think of the game. Basically, any game that you could build a house in and set properties, and you have like a base and stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think you would see a lot of like a group starting one or doing one, and then they would just abandon it, and you just have this sort of
Husk.
half finished or husk. And actually, I think there's even a flip side of that coin. Let's assume you build one and it's super successful, right? Like everyone goes there, everyone hangs out in the Dresden Street. I think it would just be a ganker hunt. You would just have gankers flying in constantly in their ships. They wouldn't land, and they would just blast every SRV and radius. And that's either going to force people to PGs or force them to give up. And God forbid those bases are destroyed. Because if they are, which I don't think they actually would be, just based on the fact that no other bases are destroyable in the game. But if they were, man, oh gosh, they would just be wrecked.
Yeah. I would like to see something like No Man's Skies version. That's why I like the idea, but at the same time, this is a multiplayer game, and people are gonna be people, and we kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt and see how we run with it.
Yeah. I'm not as sure base building is going to come. I do think we're going to start seeing like AI SRVs and stuff. As far as individual squadrons or groups being able to build bases, I'm not as convinced. I think the best thing we can really hope for is active space legs, and I don't just mean walking around your ship, but like inside stations and everything else. I think that's kind of where it's going. Although, who knows? I mean, considering they've already another Thargoid photo has released, and there's been a lot of rumors that you can, if SpaceX comes, that you'll be able to FPS with Thargoids, first-person shoot, of course. Having bases would kind of make sense for some, down hallways and other stuff, and getting these fights with Thargoids or invading a research base or something like that. But then again, you could probably do that with already in-game built bases, where you say land ship on the landable base, and then you can get out like you would at a station, but instead of being on a station, of course, you're on the base, and then being able to fight them. So I'm not as convinced or sure you're going to be able to build bases, but I do think the possibility is there. And who knows, maybe that's just another lead up to an update after that where you can build bases or something.
I just happened to thought of a cool idea, and I think I told you I went out and found a whole bunch of abandoned ships or lost ships or stuff like that. I think it would be cool if you could take a ship and park in, turn into a base.
What do you? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that or how that would.
Like, take an Anaconda. Got me so far. Just plop it on.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Plop it on whatever planet you so want to put it on. Then you can add hallways, expand from there, take bits off, and make it a little house from a ship. Like, make it a little... I feel like it would add a bit of...
It'd be great for exploring, that's for sure.
That's
based on our previous topic. Like, if you could make yourself a little home. I do think that if you're going to do something like that with... I don't think most of the current ships are really built for that. I think you could do it with, like, maybe a ship that's designed for it. Just as an example, I know there's been the rumor forever that the Panther Clipper is coming. But I'm also pretty sure that the Panther Clipper isn't going to be what it is from previous years.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to have the same name, but it's kind of like, a lot of ships that came from the previous games where, they're the same ship as far as name goes, but other than that, they're pretty altered. So who knows? You could do something with that. Almost have like a base building ship where, who knows, maybe it'll even be meant kind of for exploring. Because if you, in my opinion, we do have the Asp Explorer, I guess, and the DBX Explorer. So it's not we don't have ships that are designed, quote unquote, exploring. But it would be really cool if we had a ship that was designed for long-term exploring, because I've always felt like those ships are very much designed for short-term exploring. I mean, they're kind of small, they can't fit a ton of modules. We do have the Crate Phantom now, which is a little better, and of course you can always use your Conda, which is big enough for all that. But even the Conda is more multi-purpose; it's not strictly exploring. It would be kind of cool if you had a dedicated, big, long-range exploring ship meant to, be out the bubble, say for, months at a time, with 50, 70, or 100, even 100,000. I'm not sure. You know what I mean? Light years away from the
Yeah.
bubbles and stuff like that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just wishful thinking at the same time. I mean, I'm still hoping they're going to expand to other uh, vehicles other than the SRV. I feel like there's a lot of utilization that can be done with that.
Well, if you look back at some of the original concept art, one of the biggest ideas was it wasn't necessarily multiple types of SRV. Well, I guess kind of multiple types of SRV. They were all basically SRVs, but what they had was kind of like what you have with your ship, but they were more modular. So there was SRVs with a turret on top. There was SRVs with radars or satellites, and then there was SRVs with missile racks and other things. And I think that would be really cool. Even if you just took the current SRV mechanic, but you just added modularity to it, where you can actually make it do different things and have different purposes and different. That would add a lot to that, in my opinion. If you just did a simple change like that, which might not even be that hard, long as you actually just stuck with the original SRV as a base to work with.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, before.
Yeah, carry on.
No, did you? No, I was gonna possibly change the subject, but if you have something else to add.
I was just going to say it's something we have to see in the future, possibly.
Yeah, I think so as well. But like I said, with the new, the one thing we have confirmed is that FDev has put out a job request, I guess, or looking for an employee who specializes in AI, SRVs, and other things like that, or ground vehicles. So I think it's pretty clear just from that alone that, hey, they're doing something with it. Now, whether that just be simple as, hey, we want SRVs that can drive on their own and players can interact with them in some way or another, or if it's a little bit more than that, maybe they're trying to open up some options for SRVs. But either way, the point is we do know that they're at least doing something with that. So we, like a lot of the show, actually, it's a lot of speculation. And I think, unfortunately, with the updates being so far apart, I mean, September, you're getting a small livery update, and you're getting the ability to do your livery at the beginning. There's other updates, which actually we'll get into one of those quality updates in a second. And then, of course, the December update with fleet carriers, and then the big update in 2020, which we're very about, other than the bigger space legs. Finally, see. But yeah, we're kind of in that speculation, right? Because there's just so much dead time between it.
Yeah.
So actually, that kind of leads us into our final topic, though, being the next September update, which would be the new currency, ARX. So, thoughts, feelings. Zach, I don't know if you're back yet. All right,
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, well, maybe, Zach, this is something we all should have an opinion on, because none of us have experienced it yet. What do you think of the new currency system coming to Elite Dangerous, ARX?
I think it adds a. I think it kind of it's different. It looks like it makes things a little bit easier to acquire things in game, specifically like cosmetic stuff. Being able to just purchase arcs, and use that to buy like a ship kit or a paint job or something like that. But you can also acquire them through gameplay as well. You don't have to actually buy them. So, maybe
Yeah.
you just play a lot, and you do certain objectives. My guess is, well, maybe instead, like for community goals, for example, this is a perfect opportunity for that. Is that, what if one of the community goal rewards was like arcs that you could use for whatever you wanted, not just like a decal or something.
Oh, that would be. Sparks, do you want to jump in on this?
I feel like ARX is, in my opinion, the first step in Elite Dangerous to making it free to play, I feel like Elite Dangerous might be following a similar way to like Guilds of War, where originally you had to buy it, but the base game originally became free. I feel like this is the first steps of a free to play game, and to be honest, I'm actually pretty happy about that. I don't know how y'all see or feel about it.
Well, I think we're all on the same page. I know Zach just pretty much said he was. I think the coolest thing, and Zach's already mentioned it, is the fact that you will finally be able to use your in-game time and your in-game gameplay to earn arcs. And what's kind of neat about it is it's not asking you to do anything in particular. It was pretty clear that they were just saying, hey, log in a few times a week, maybe even just one time a week, and do whatever you enjoy doing, and you'll earn these arcs. So it's not saying, oh, you need to go grind this or you need to go do that to get arcs. It's saying, hey, just play the game, whatever way you enjoy playing it. And the fact that you're going to get a real reward and not just some credits in game, but actually, hey, you want to make this ship look cool? Buy a paint job, buy yourself a bobblehead, buy yourself string light, buy yourself a ship kit, or whatever you might like to do. Like, I think that is really, really neat. I have to say one thing: maybe it's just convenience, but I'm not a super huge fan of and I never have been of basically taking my actual money, converting it into whatever their digital currency is, and then doing that. But I will say that I'm willing to deal with that one minor irritation to myself for the fact that you can earn it in game. And I feel like if you're gonna earn it in game, you have to do that anyway, right? Because you can't put it in game and then be like, hey, we're giving you 50 cents a week to play of actual money. You know what I mean? Of course you cannot do that. One, you would lose a lot because people would just play the game to earn money, and other stuff. So I totally get why they had to switch to the ARC system if you're going to implement that. And I definitely, despite the mild annoyance of having to go through a second party currency, I'm willing to sacrifice that to actually earn. I think that's so cool because there's a lot of pilots out there who just either A, don't have the money, or B, don't want to spend it because their money's tight, or C, just are cheap for whatever reason you might have. And now this will give those pilots a way to really make their ships unique, so that we don't have to see 4 condas that all when we're fighting. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So I think that is really, really. I'm also hoping that if some of those other ideas we talked about earlier, like fleet carriers or base building or more SRV modulation, I'm hoping we'll get some more options for this. Maybe a few things we can use these bucks for. You know what I mean? Different things we can actually spend it on besides just the standard stuff we have now. So I think there's a lot of possibilities for the future. I will say that I think I just kind of want to finish off with, I think FDev is doing more than people think they are. And I think one of the reasons that we've got this long wait is not only are they a little limited on staff because of other projects and stuff, but I also think it's because they're finally really trying to do something big. I think they've kind of gotten the message from the community that they're a little sick of these tiny updates or a little sick of these underwhelming updates. And I think they finally went, you know what, guys, it's going to make you wait a little bit longer, but we're finally going to give you something more. Which is why I think the new update, the new big one anyway, not the September or December, but the new big update will be a paid update, is because one, they're going to need funding, but two, they're putting a lot of time into this. So maybe I'm an optimist, maybe I'll be wrong, but I have a lot of hope for Elite Dangerous' future.
I agree. I'm hoping that they churn out a beta. I feel like this is going to need a beta. With this big of an update, there's going to be a lot of bugs, and they better be squishing them.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think even with the fleet carrier update, I almost hope there's a beta.
Yeah, they're going to need feedback and balancing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Zach, is there? I think we've covered most of the topics. Is there anything you'd like to add before sort of end the show here?
I think I'm pretty good.
All right. Well, Spark, anything else you're forgetting, or I'll let you close it out, bud.
Nope, I think that covers it. As usual, guys, if you have any questions or comments, make sure to put them in the comment sections of this video, and we will hopefully answer any topics that you have asked. And we'll get back to you on the next podcast. Also, if you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It does help the channel, it helps future content. And we'll catch you on the next one, guys. See ya.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Fly dangerous.